Save big at Menards. Discovering the perfect paint for your home has never been easier with Zinsser Smart Coat. Plan smart with interactive tools at smartcoat.com. Buy smart in-store or online for home delivery. And paint smart with this advanced paint and primer in one. Save big on Zinsser Smart Coat at Menards, America's #1 home improvement retailer for customer satisfaction, according to J.D. Power. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Save big money at Menards.
I can just tell the brain's not working right still after, put it this way. I was shirtless on the dance floor at the end of the night.
No one needs to see that.
That's what, funniest thing was that of everybody at the wedding, there was, one person I didn't know that was like, put your shirt back on. I'm like, fuck you.
The following podcast may contain discussions supported by science that may be considered dangerous to some listeners and conspiracy theorists. Discretion is advised.
The Three Down Greencast is brought to you by the Pile of Bones Brewing Company. Home delivery available in Regina at sassbeerdelivery.ca. Welcome! Sorry, John, was that too loud?
It might have been a little too loud, Joel. I am surprisingly still hurting from, God, during our little preamble that doesn't get recorded, I just realized the sip of vodka I had was the first sip of anything I've had since I tried to have a little hair of the dog on Sunday. I am still in rough shape, and it is Tuesday, and I haven't gone hard since Saturday. So, yes, let's keep the volume to a minimum, and I'm sure my dumb takes are about to be even dumber because my brain is just flat out not working, Joel.
Mm-hmm. Yes, welcome to the Three Down Greencast. You are listening to the internet's only kicker appreciation podcast.
Yes!
I am Joel Gasson with John Fraser, as usual. And yes, we will get into the Saskatchewan Roughriders' first loss of the year. Pretty much a beatdown at the hands of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the Labor Day Classic. We'll get into it a little bit. I am going to amend my piece a little bit from the post game there, where I was said the bad, the worst, and the dumb from that game.
There was
something good that we will talk about that we decided that was good from that game, because as they say, it's never as bad as it looks, right? So there was something we can take from that. Yes. But as we mentioned, we of course are the Kicker Appreciation Podcast, and this was of course also the first weekend of American college football. My favorite brand of football.
And the chaos was back. You know what's funny? I've never watched a down of American college football until I've started getting to know you, and it's just more and more the chaos, the fun. I am just more and more drawn to it. So I appreciate that you still realize how friggin' busy I am with three tiny humans to look after, and just kind of send me the best parts. And this out of all the random college football stuff you've ever sent me, this might top it, Joel.
It's pretty good if what happened we believe is what actually happened here. So
I've watched the replay. I think it is.
Yeah. With about 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter of the game between Mercer and Point. Never heard of Point before, which is ironic considering the score of that time. Point had no points, and they scored no points. But there was a kicker. They just scored a touchdown. The Mercer just scored a touchdown, and that gave them a 69-0 lead.
Mm-hmm.
So what does Mercer do? Well, they run out for the point after try, which is missed. So of course,
nice.
If you want to learn more about sort of the dumbness of college football, I would recommend following No Context College Football on Twitter.
Yep.
Great stuff. There's all kinds of random stuff. There's a lot of canon, a lot of memes comes out of what they have tweeted over the years, so they're kind of the place to see that. So yeah, they tweet the video of this missed PAT, and the follow-up is a poll that asked, missed intentionally? ? Yes, no, or just nice. And all you need to know is that nice was the second highest responded question. 63.5% of almost 27,500 votes, which is a lot on Twitter.
That is a ton.
Said that yes, he missed on purpose to make sure that the score remained 69-0.
I am very much in that camp. First off, that's a nice score. Second, the only thing I could see to play devil's advocate is I have started to learn from starting to dabble in watching college football with you. I have much more of an appreciation for the pro level kickers because there's a lot of misses in college.
Hashtag college kickers is very much a thing. Anytime a kick is missed in college, especially when it's like one that should not be missed, you can just search hashtag college kickers and there'll just be thousands of people tweeting just hashtag college kickers. I do it all the time.
Never gone to that length, but so that's the only thing. Like if this was the pros and somebody misses a convert in an absolute runaway to make it 69 to whatever, you know that it's probably missed on purpose because these guys are pretty automatic. In college, the only thing I will say is maybe he just sucked, but I have watched the video. Now, again, you sent me this Saturday. Did you send me that tweet?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, so you sent it to me on Saturday. I was still hungover from Friday, and had probably started drinking by the time I got it on Saturday. I was home for one of my very best friend's weddings back in Northern Ontario, and anybody from a small town knows that you just kind of start seeing people, and you just it's just like a runaway train for 2 days, right? So I watched this video, possibly with one eye open, blurrily watching it while amongst a bunch of people. And it doesn't look like to me like the kicker's got that like oomph when he approaches the ball. Maybe the holder kind of, laces in instead of laces out. Like I feel like they went through the motions. There's just something off about the whole play that I think it was absolutely a team effort on purpose.
I like to believe that it was. Like there's still got to be some good in this world that they would recognize that situation and say, hey, we really don't need to go up 70-0.
Right.
We have a perfectly nice score right here.
Very nice score.
So why do that? And I believe, it should basically be an unwritten rule of football. Because, the rarity of anyone getting to 69 points is, rare, even in college football circles.
Right.
So why not basically make an unwritten rule? If you are in a scenario, any kind of scenario where you can get to 69, you go for it. So if you score a touchdown and you're sitting at 67, sorry, you're going for 2. If you can score a touchdown, you're at 68, you're going for 1.
Right.
And if you score a touchdown, you're at 69. I don't care how you get out of it, you are not making that point after try.
Which I would like to present one of the greatest failures of the amateur football season anywhere in North America to you right now, Joel.
Mm-hmm.
The Regina Thunder scored 64 points in a half of football and finished with a score of 64 points after both halves. I would argue that if you get to 64 in one half, you should be able to get to 69.
Especially in like Canadian rules where you can easily get ones to get
exactly.
There. Like that's
Rouge,
just a field goal and 2 rouges.
How sweet would not sweet? How nice would a rouge for 69 be? I think that would be the all-time football kicker here. That kicker that kicks a rouge on purpose for 69 might be my second favorite kicker behind Sergio.
That should get you into like the Canadian Football Hall of Fame.
Basically. Did you see Sergio tweeting out about Labor Day too?
I did not know.
I retweeted it twice.
Huh.
Because that's my boy. It was one of his favorite kicks was when he won the game for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. The only bad part was Rod Black was on the highlights of that.
I was going to say, though, that this kicker may be rising the ranks of our favorite kickers. Not like competing against Sergio just yet, but all I'm saying is this guy should be on a CFL leg list.
I would agree, only because he clearly has what they would call situational awareness. And you know what else he needs some situational awareness right now, Joel?
Who?
Your balls.
Mm-hmm.
And all of our listeners across the galaxy, all the way from Australia to Houston. I'm even too tired to make up something else in the copy. Do we have a pube problem, Joel? I'm not even going to ask for the space music. If we do have a pube problem, our friends at Manscaped have cleared you for takeoff with their 4th generation and brand new Lawnmower 4.0. Kick your pubes to the next planet with the Performance Package 4.0. The orbits in your pants will feel like you're in zero gravity when you use the best tool for the jobs from the leaders in male grooming. Join the 2 million men worldwide, including me and my Equipmunk, who trust Manscaped, and get your rocket ready for takeoff by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code FANSIDED20. 20% off, free shipping with the code FANSIDED20 at manscaped.com. 20% off, free shipping. The code FANSIDED20 at manscaped.com for a clean Trinity and beyond. Your space balls will thank you.
Do we have pajama update today? That's usually how you end these things now, so I was waiting for that.
That is usually how I end it, because I don't even have the energy to remember what I put my kids' pajamas in, because they were like, I'm still
it wasn't Toy Story. That's really all that matters.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And I'm almost ashamed that I can't even remember, but they were like real hyper today, so it was just kind of like as the great Sam Jackson book says, go the fuck to sleep. And that was a struggle.
Yeah. The writers also had a struggle, that's for sure. And
oh boy.
Yeah. So we're going to get into that in a second. We might need a little bit of lubrication to talk about that first, though. So, John, as usual, for the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, what is in the glass this week?
If you have the same thing that I have, I think like destiny or something brought us together.
We're just going to turn off this podcast and that'll be the episode.
That's it. We're just going to cold end. That's it. It's over, because I can't see you.
Won't even get no warning. Sorry, Jacques Cartier.
Yeah, just boom, done. I have actually. So while I was in Northern Ontario for Jordan's wedding, and basically drunk for 3 days, my wife and her family went to Drumheller. So as I was the one having all the fun, I did not expect gifts. I'm not the person that expects gifts, but my lovely wife brought back from Valley Brewing, Brewed of the Badlands, the Discovery Raspberry Ale. It's got dinosaurs on it. It is awesome. Real raspberries that are fermented in the can. I poured it out, and like you said, the taste with the fruits is to see if it actually looks like it. This does actually look like there's raspberries in here. Unlike my Lake of the Woods that I drank way too much of on this weekend, only about 5%, and literally my first sip of it was as I cracked that right after I kind of nailed, unlike last week, our Manscaped read. So it's very nice. It's that tart. It says it's an ale, but the raspberries almost make it a sour. Very good. I don't know where else you would find it. Probably in Alberta, I would assume, but Valley Brewing. I also have a shirt from Valley Brewing. So I'm full Valley Brewing mode tonight, and this is really good, actually.
Nice. For me, I believe it's a first for this brewery on the podcast this week. I have brought from Warehouse Brewing here in Regina, one of the newer outfits in the city, their Queen City Kolsch. So just another one of those nice, easy drinking beers that kind of tastes like beer. It's really come along, their stuff over the last little while. So if you haven't checked out Warehouse in a while, I would definitely recommend it. The Kolsch, one of the favorites I know from the brewing team down at the Pile of Bones Brewing Company. That's how they kind of got me back into this. I tried it with them one day again. I was like, oh yeah, this is really good now. So
right. So it's funny too.
Mm-hmm.
I had a full spectrum while I was in Atikokan of my beer taste, right? So obviously I had stopped at Sleeping Giant Brewing in Thunder Bay, picked up some of their stuff for the ride, including there's anybody from out east that's listening to this. There was like a lime and mint beer from Sleeping Giant, which was really, it's one of those you could have one of, but it was really good. So then the next day, invited to a barbecue around noon at Jordan's house, thinking, okay, you're at a barbecue in Northern Ontario, you're probably getting a cooler full of shit. Oh no, he had stocked up on nothing but Lake of the Woods and Sleeping Giant, which means, of course, me being the glutton I am, had 6 before my golf round at 2:30. So I went from that, where it was like really like Sleeping Giant, Lake of the Woods, real great local beers, till, you know, you always have that, somebody always has a party between ceremony and reception.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you just have a smart wedding like you guys did and just roll the whole time. So we went to my buddy Jesse's house, and he hands me, he says, you want a beer? And I said, yeah, sure, whatever. You know, when in Rome. He hands me an OV. If you But I tell you what, Joel, I drank that OV. I like a champ. And then
I'm amazed they even had that. Like, we can't. The distributors don't even have it here right now.
Oh, it's huge still in Northern Ontario.
Huh.
I didn't know that it was such a Northwestern Ontario staple that like you can just get OV. And the funny thing is again, thank you for having me at your house if you're listening, Jesse. But Jesse is like sharing the glory of OV. So I went back. He said, grab whatever you want out of the fridge. I managed to find in the very back corner of his fridge something from Sleeping Giant. And I was on that like white on rice. But for shits and giggles, Joel, I had 2 OVs, and they were just as terrible as you think they are.
Yeah, and that Labor Day Classic was pretty much just about as terrible as any Rider fan probably thought it was.
Can I put my arms up in the air and gloat for a second?
Sure.
Booyah! Of course, that's because, I wasn't there because the Bombers never win when I'm there. And I believe
you weren't even in the province. You're gonna have to leave the province every Labor Day now. From now on, you know that, right?
Or just go there and accept that I'm gonna they're gonna lose, and I'm gonna get drunk and just like hang out in your super cool backyard.
I mean, if that's what you want to do, sure.
That is kind of what I want to do. Labor Day is like one of those games as a Blue Bomber fan. You never expect to win. It's even funny if you ask any Bomber fan, like you can sit there drinking before the game, and everybody's like, "Yeah, you're gonna lose," and you're like, "Yeah, we usually do. That's fine. We're still here for a good time, right?" Like it's this like self-deprecatingness of the Bomber fans that show up. We're like, "Yeah, we're gonna lose, but we're gonna drink and have a good time, right?" So, that's me when I show up to any Bomber game, which is why again the West Final was such a shocker.
Fair enough. So yeah, the Riders obviously did not look very good in that game. And I think it's safe to say a lot of fears people had about this team at the start of the season. Some of it definitely manifested in that game. Most notably would be the offensive line play and the ability to protect Cody Fajardo, as even the quick passing game just wasn't really working to any sort of degree. And yeah, I mean, that's basically all you can really say about that game. Was there was just Cody. I mean, the line held up for the first drive or two. It's felt a little bit, and there were strangely times where there's a good chunk of, I believe, partway through the first quarter into the second quarter, where the Riders were actually doing quite well in terms of the field position game that was going on at the time. Like, if they broke through at any point through that might have changed that football game, but they didn't, because they really could have, done some damage there, because that game kind of hovered around midfield and just sort of onto the Bomber side for a little bit there, and they just couldn't quite get that breakthrough play to give themselves a chance. And it never really came all game. It eventually came for the Bombers, as it kind of did in the West Final as well. The games were very eerily similar in terms of, not quite to the same degree. Like, the Riders got to the goal line a couple times in the West Final, and that's really what did them in more than the goalpost than anything. But this, they never really got that close until the end when it didn't matter, which we can talk about in a bit, and why Cody Fajardo was out there at that time and blah, 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 blah. But it's still concerning, I think, in the big picture. Not so much that they lost a game. Like, the Riders weren't going to go 14-0. No one was going to go 14-0 in this season. They were going to lose, and it's not surprising that they lost to a very good Winnipeg Blue Bombers team, who I believe are showing right now are heads and tails the best team in the league right now. I don't think there's any question about that. So losing to them, grand scheme of things, okay, that's bound to happen. But the concern is more so that, okay, for 2 games in a row now against this team, Labor Day's big. It's not a playoff game, but it's still big. In 2 sort of, big marquee games, they kind of look the same, and that was 2 different offensive coordinators.
Yes, but I think the sins of both offensive coordinators were nearly identical, right? The thing that I was surprised, and you and I have discussed it on this podcast before, that the best way to get an offensive line into the game is let them run block.
Yeah.
That means you get to smash people in the face. The crowd's behind you. You're feeling it. I'm sure they had a game plan that they needed to get Cody going, because without Cody, this team does not go. But, just look at the rushing attempts right now. How is it that William Powell had yet again only 8 attempts?
I mean, this is kind of what, Jason Moss has done this a lot. And, that's kind of how Mike Riley got so banged up over the years. And now it's kind of starting to happen to Cody Fajardo again. And it's like, okay, yes, these guys can run, but should they be running? Right. And we saw that twice in that game where there was a couple hellacious hits he took. The one late, he maybe could have been a flag. But, the one late, my issue with that is, why was he still in the game at that point? Right. Number one, why is he still in that game? And number 2, why is he running if he is? Just hand off the football. So, yeah, this has been a conversation ongoing in the press box. Daryl Davis of the Green Zone is not enjoying how much Cody Fajardo is running. And it's like, okay, you have William Powell, who's supposed to be one of the best running backs in the league. Use him.
Well, and even you look at the numbers, 8 carries for 44 yards. Yeah. It's not like it was one of those, like, I get it if you rush the guy 8 times and he comes out with 12 yards. I get it. You need to move away. It's not happening. But the thing is, for me, rushing almost works better when your offensive line is worse sometimes, because you could tell through that game, he had Willie Jefferson, Jackson Jeffcoat just pitting their ears back and coming at Cody. Like, as soon as the the defensive line smelled blood in the water, Richie Hall was just sending them. Well, they were sending them to the point that every time Powell did get the ball, they were almost behind where Powell was going to be, and he had a chance to actually gain some yards. So, again, this is just me who's never played or coached or anything, looking at that going, well, wouldn't you run a little bit more if the defensive line has their ears pinned back and they're just going and try and get at Cody Fajardo? So I was surprised they didn't try to run the ball more. Some more draw plays for not Cody Fajardo, I think, would have been very effective in that game, because, yeah, as soon as there was blood in the water, those guys were coming. And it was something that we had discussed the week before, that this is going to be the first real test for this Riders O-line, who was kind of the feel-good story of the campaign so far. And I don't think anybody's feeling good about it. Like, against the best defensive line in football, they looked real bad. Like, there was no stopping those guys. As you mentioned, Cody was getting hit hard, and to the point, like, I started to worry that, especially that one where his right shoulder was sore. You could tell he was favoring that side. Like, it just, it was not a good performance by that O-line, and that's where it starts. And I know it's so cliche and it's so simplified, and I was listening. I was on planes most of the time. I was listening to CJOB, which had the great insight of Doug Brown. I'm sure Glenn Suter on the broadcast just probably couldn't shut up about the trenches and the offensive line and all that kind of good stuff. So,
well, yeah, it's I heard it described well this way on the Split Zone Duo podcast, which is a smart college football podcast, not a dumb one. It was one of their hosts, Richard Johnson, brought up that they were talking about one of the games this past weekend, where you can talk about scheme, you can talk about talent, you can talk about this and that and the other thing, but ultimately the game of football comes down to blocking and tackling.
Right.
And I was like, wow. I'm like, we've always talked about like trench play and everything, but he kept reiterating, like, comes down to blocking and tackling. I'm like, yeah. And in fairness, the Rider defense was very good in that game. They did all they could, short of scoring. Had they scored a touchdown in that game, it might have made a bit of a difference if they scored it, at the right time.
I would agree, yeah.
But yeah, it comes down to blocking and tackling, and I think the defensive line had a little bit of their struggles. I mean, Andrew Harris had a pretty good day, and I think that proves, that yes, Micah Johnson is a very important part of this defensive line if he's not registering sacks anymore. I think that was blatantly obvious in that football game.
Which, again, I never try to be arrogant in my football knowledge, but whenever I see people smack talk him, it just drives me absolutely up the walls, right? Like,
yeah. But, of course, overall, the defensive line play pales in comparison to what happened to the offensive line.
Oh, yeah. No, like, saying the defensive line wasn't great, because they weren't. But, again, that's what you're going to happen when your most important piece is out. They almost, to me, get a bit of a pass because he was gone. And I didn't think that they were that porous. I thought they did a decent job of holding Andrew Harris in check, but Andrew Harris has that ability, it seems, as a game wears on, to break out a couple of those big plays. Like, a lot of Andrew Harris's big plays didn't come until the second half, until the Bombers were up, right?
Yeah, and I think the defense was just wearing out at that point.
Well, that's it. They were on the field like a real long time. Zach Caleros, watching him run around was a little concerning for me as a Bomber fan, but it was good to see. So the defensive line, I want to give a bit of a pass to, and to me, this is almost like my statement of saying, look what happens when the guy who you all criticize doesn't have the numbers, isn't there. And I've been saying it since they re-signed him, that he's a huge part of that, and you should acknowledge that. And it bothers me when people get mad that, he's not putting up the huge sack. Like, he's the most valuable part of your defensive line. So, to me, you're right. They weren't good. but they get a pass. It's the only thing that I think I'm sounding the panic button on for this team is that offensive line, because I think the Bombers just, sometimes you see a team start off hot and then it's almost like they play a game where a defensive coordinator, an offensive coordinator has figured out the blueprint to beat them. And I'm worried that the Bombers have just done that to the Riders.
It's possible. It's possible to a degree, but I don't know if any other team has the personnel to do it to that level.
Right. Not to the level that Winnipeg did it. But to me, it just showed that you can basically invite Cody and the offense to go deep. And they can't do it or won't do it.
Well, they've it's not that they won't. I think they've tried. They've made a few attempts every single game so far. For some reason, they just haven't been successful at it. I think, obviously, against Winnipeg, I think the throws were off because Cody was not handling the pressure well, and he had the deep shot to Kyron Moore there and overthrew him badly. There were other games where there was a few that were a little closer and they just didn't connect for whatever reason. And, there's some talk about whether they miss Shaq Evans at this point or not. They bring in Ricardo Lewis to try to stretch the field a bit. It didn't look like that really worked, or I don't really know what's going on with this whole Ricardo Lewis, Paul McRoberts thing. Something feels off there for some reason.
Something weird is going on, yep.
Yeah, but that they don't really seem to want to talk about. But, yeah, and I think there's two things that they need to do offensively, especially in the Banjo Bowl coming up. And then once they get through this Winnipeg stretch, where that goes from there, we'll have to see, and we'll have to see whether other teams can, properly, sort of duplicate what the Bombers did or not. But again, in the Banjo Bowl, of course, as we talked about, they need to establish William Powell. They need to run the football. Yep. And I think it would really help if they can connect on that deep pass. Even if it's not even for a touchdown, if they can get something, a 30, 40-yard pass to someone just to stretch that field a little bit and make you think about it for a second, that maybe this is something they can do today, that would be a big help.
Well, I think this goes back to maybe the more casual observer is going to see that, okay, the Riders didn't want to throw deep. I saw a lot of noise like that on social media, and it's not that they didn't want to, as you said, Joel. They did. Yeah,
they tried a few. I believe it was against Hamilton.
Right.
They tried a few and they weren't successful, but it worked enough on Hamilton for them to back off a bit, and that opened up everything underneath for them.
Well, and I found in these games against Winnipeg, and the reason I say it might be the blueprint, and I concede you're right. I don't think anybody else has the personnel, in the front seven that Winnipeg does. Like, nobody else has that kind of talent, but to me, it looked like they wanted to go deep. There was routes that were planned for Cody to go deep, and the pressure just came way too quick, right? So I don't know if other teams will have to, use a lot of blitzing or use a lot of different looks to try to get that pressure past this Rider offensive line. But to me, Cody had the hardest time that he's ever had in his career. And there was a couple moments too that worried me about Cody. This is the first time I've looked at Cody and gone, okay, I mean, for one, his post-game comments were awesome. Any guy that can just own that he had a bad game, I'll give a ton of credit to. Like, he came out, said, I deserve the flack. I wasn't great. This is basically on me, right? So, but what does concern me is you look at the couple of the interceptions. I mean, yeah, he was under constant pressure, but you had guys jumping off of either zones where they should have been or routes where they should have been to jump these passes. And the only thing I worry about with Cody is he telegraphing a little bit too much right now. Because
he might be. We would have to, really go back and watch, a lot of other games and probably get access to angles that we can't get access to,
and just generally be smarter about football.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe part of that was just the pressure in his face all night. Maybe he was, he wanted to make sure he could, he knew he was going before he, because he knew he only had 3 seconds before he was getting hit. I don't know.
Right.
So maybe that played into it. So it's really hard to say. All we know for sure is that this is something they're going to have to figure out. Because I think they're still capable of beating every other team in the league. I just don't know if they can beat the Bombers. And if they can't beat the Bombers, then quite frankly, they're not getting to the Grey Cup.
No. I mean, A, they're your division rival. And B, they're somebody you're going to have to get through to get to the Grey Cup. And especially with that element with Winnipeg that they haven't had with Zach Collaros. Like, I think I said on this podcast, or it might have just been you and I texting, that I think one of the best things to ever happen to Zach Collaros was the 600-day layoff because of COVID. He doesn't look scared anymore. I always thought these past couple years with Saskatchewan, with Winnipeg, he always looked like he was scared of that next big hit that was going to knock him out. He looks healthy. He doesn't look scared anymore. And maybe he got some performance enhancers from Andrew Harris, maybe some trace amounts or whatever. But to me,
he hasn't been eating the Subway lettuce. Or actually, no, he did have the Subway lettuce in that game. Actually.
He did have the Subway lettuce because he had the mysterious lower body injury. And man, that tweet of yours was. I love that actually has caught that for all the dumb inside jokes we have in this podcast, the amount of traction that one got in an awful hurry. I feel like I'm not the only one that Subway lettuce gives the poops to.
Apparently. No, and you could be entirely right. I think also playing probably in front of the best offensive line he's played in front of maybe ever certainly helps with his confidence in that regard too.
Right. But he when he tucks it, I remember watching him in Saskatchewan last year before, the injury and they traded him. You watched him when he tucked and run. He was running to not get hurt, and now he's running to gain yardage, right? And maybe Cody needs to learn a little bit of the running to not get hurt, because I am genuinely concerned about Cody Fajardo. And
I think in that regard too, the good move into the spot here where it was such a bad game overall for a lot of people. It was a bad game for Craig Dickinson as well.
Yes, I would agree.
Because, 100%. There was the whole rodeo just before halftime, which was incredibly dumb on so many levels and just remarkable. You can read about sort of the breakdown of everything that happened there, including the hilarious roughing the kicker call that had to get overturned as one of the most ridiculous calls I think anyone involved in the sport of professional football in Canada has ever seen.
Anyone involved, I haven't seen a roughing, and I've done a lot of junior football, and I've never seen a call that bad. It was simply atrocious, and I apologize because I do have a friend on that crew.
Yeah.
And he was not the one responsible for throwing the flag, and thank God, because I don't know if I could defend him after that.
I think he probably would have fessed up to that one and been like, yeah, that was a bad call.
That's fair. That's fair.
Because, in that moment in time, I gave Craig Dickinson credit because, literally watching from the press box, almost every single member of the Riders was on the field when they played the replay of that while losing their minds at that call. And probably rightfully so. But then Craig and the staff, kind of shooed them all back onto the bench, tried to, restore order before anything got too crazy. And then he dealt with it from there. But then he just... And this is a problem Craig Dickinson has had in the past, is clock management.
Right.
So they actually, probably their biggest passing play of the day, they get down to whatever yard line it was. I don't remember exactly. But they were decently into Bomber territory after a 12-yard play to Kyron Moore. And he should have called the timeout instantly and didn't, and this whole chaotic scene ensued, and eventually they called timeout with about 3 seconds left, and Brett Lowther comes on for the field goal, when they could have had maybe 2 shots before that to the end zone had Craig Dickinson just called the timeout. And then later in the game, when they're, after the touchdown pass from Zach Caleros to Nick Dembski, #1play Dembski.
That's right. I love, the funniest thing was that was the last text because they backed us. We were about to take off on the plane, so I put my phone on airplane mode, and then they backed us up. They said, "Okay, we're slightly delayed," and so I turned my phone back on, and all the only text I got, the first one I got from you was "1play Dembski." I didn't even have time for social media, and I'm like, Dembski got a touchdown because it's coming. 1 play per game.
Yeah, good for one really good play a game. Yep. The game was settled at that point. Isaac Harker should have been in, and then they're rushing down the field, and Cody Fajardo just takes a hellacious hit on a play where he, as we talked about earlier, shouldn't have been running.
No.
And shouldn't have even been in the game, quite frankly. And I know they talked after the game that, Cody wants to stay out there, and he's their quarterback, and they felt they could still score a touchdown, recover the onside kick, blah, blah, whatever. Can we please just learn from the clock management and from this for a change? And if you're in this scenario again, don't put him out there. Just don't put him out there to take that hit.
Well, that's all right. This is 2 games now that and again, in the blowout against Hamilton, Cody staying in there early season, Hamilton was not getting at him. I was almost okay with it. I'm with you.
There was talk from some people thinking maybe they should have put in Harker sooner just to either A, give Cody a break, or B, try something different.
Right.
I don't know if I agree when the game was still close, but regardless.
Right. That Hamilton game where Cody stayed in, I still think it's okay because nobody in Hamilton was getting anywhere near him. But this game, like, he was getting hit from the early going and getting hit constantly. That is the kind of game you go, you know what? We don't have it today. Let's move on to next week because, yeah, he ends up taking that late hit, that late dirty hit. And it's another one on your quarterback who has to recover and play again against this Winnipeg D line coming up here this weekend, right? So I'm 100% with you. I was floored to hear that he was still in it because I think that was the other text I got of yours, or I got that text from somebody when I had super spotty in-flight Wi-Fi surrounded by people with terrible personal hygiene on the most hellish flight I've had in my entire life.
Yeah, so not exactly the best day for Craig Dickinson either.
No. But again, he's, correct me if I'm wrong, has he ever been a head coach at any level?
I couldn't say for sure. He hasn't at the CFL level until this job.
Right, and he was always a special teams guy.
Yeah.
Right? It always seemed like Craig Dickinson is a great football mind and a great guy and everything you want to see in a coach, but he has not a ton of reps as a head coach because he was always kind of a special teams guy because that's where he fit and it allowed him to continue being the snowboard coach, right? So I hope this is a learning one for him, and he strikes me as the kind of guy, he's not going to be your Andy Reid that, again, Andy Reid has had a ton of success with terrible clock management. It seems like this is going to be the kind of game that everybody learns from. My only worry is that opponents have learned from it a lot as well, and now the Riders have bled their own blood, and now everybody knows how to make them bleed.
I mean, that happens to every team at some point, too, though.
Right, absolutely.
Right? And because, I mean, it's like any player, you know, it's like a lot of players that come into the CFL, a lot of quarterbacks that come into professional football. They have a good run for a while, teams adjust to you, and that's when we find out whether you're good or not. And that's basically where we're at with the Saskatchewan Roughriders now is, okay, you got punched in the mouth, the book is out, could be out on you now. How do you adjust and how do you go from there? If they come back and they win the Banjo Bowl, then they're a good team. Even if they come back and lose the Banjo Bowl and kind of go on from there, but adjust and get better,
right?
They're a good team. They might not be the number one team in the West. I think if they lose the Banjo Bowl, they're probably destined to finish second in the West.
Yeah, that's almost a certainty by then.
So I'm not saying it's must win, but if you want to finish first in the West, it's basically must win at this point.
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing is too with the rest of the Labor Day results is Saskatchewan, even if they are to lose the Banjo Bowl, even if Edmonton wins, the rematch between them and Calgary, they're still very much so in the driver's seat for a home playoff game. But you're right. I think you can throw first place out the window, considering Winnipeg would then be perfect against their own division, and then 2 wins up on their biggest rival because again, I know the CFL uses points, but that's just pet peeve of mine. I hate when they talk about
the points. The points don't even matter in the CFL. Like, I don't know why they put the points in the standings. The record speaks for itself. There isn't it's not like the NHL where there's points for losing in overtime or different points for doing different things. It's literally you win or you lose. So why do they have the points anyway? That's a whole other issue.
No, you're right, because I'm glad that you and I feel the exact same way on that because I was watching the end of the Elks and Stamps game when I was back on Monday, and it's like, yeah, there's a big 2 points for the Elks. I'm like, it's a win. Just stop. It's a win. And for the record, it was not Dustin Nielsen who said that, who is quickly becoming the best CFL play-by-play guy in the league.
Yeah, and I mean, if I had it my way, the NHL would do away with the point system as well, just because I don't think it's necessary. You win or you lose.
Yeah, the loser point is terrible and trash, and it just makes everybody feel better they can finish almost in the playoffs.
I mean, all points. Like, everyone's talking about trying to fix the NHL with, like, a 3-point system or anything. I'm like, no, just go to win percentage.
Right.
It works in the NBA. It works in Major League Baseball. It works in the National Football League. It basically works in the CFL. Why do we need points? Said here we are. I'm sitting here looking at the standings and seeing the stupid points column, and now my eyes. Honestly, I've never really ever looked at the points column in the CFL standings, for being perfectly honest. The only reason I'm looking at it is because you and I are currently discussing it, but no, I'm the same way. I'm all about records, and anybody that talks about the CFL talks about the record. Nobody says, "Oh, how about them Riders? They got 6 points through 4 games." No, they're 3-1. Deal with it. So there's an old saying in football that it's never as bad on film as it looked during the game. True. Yes. And so I am going to do a little amendment to my post-game piece right now here on the show. And that is, of course, usually I do the good, the bad, and the dumb. This week I did the bad, the worst, and the dumb. But I think there was a good. There was a good that we can talk about, and it's a good we haven't really talked about on this program before, if we're being perfectly honest. We've probably been harsh.
Ever.
Yeah, we've been a little harsh on this guy a little over the course of his time in Saskatchewan since going back.
It's not Sam Hurl.
No, because Sam Hurl isn't here.
I know, but that's the other guy we just like.
He's probably doing real estate or insurance or something somewhere, like every other ex-CFLer does. And that would, of course, be one punter, Jonathan Ryan. And it's clear that they are taking a different approach with him this year, and I would argue the Labor Day Classic may have been his best game as a Saskatchewan Roughrider.
Just as a quick aside,
yeah,
because I googled this. Sam Hurl's a realtor in Calgary.
Of course, there we go.
I knew where you were going, talking about Jon Ryan having a great game, but I'm like, you're right, I gotta look this up, and sure as shit, for Cushman and Wakefield, there you go. Calgary's real estate Marcus. His focus is primarily on landlord and vendor representation, identifying client needs and providing solutions. That's a lot of buzzwords in one sentence.
Whatever that means, yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, yeah, Jon Ryan was good. And yeah, I think there was one. I don't know. Actually, no, I think the Rouge, I don't remember. Was he responsible for Rouge? I know there was the Rouge for the missed Lowther field goal, but I don't remember if he was actually responsible for one or not. Regardless, it's clear there's actually direction in his punting this year. I think there's more hang time. It's a little not quite as strong. So I don't know if maybe the sort of the thought from some people is true that maybe in 2019 they were punting for points with him. I think it's clear this year they're not. He's definitely sort of got the CFL game back, the Canadian game back in sort of his punting style, because legitimately he had his best game, I think, in the CFL since returning from the NFL. Best game in the Rider uniform, and legitimately made a difference in that football game because he single-handedly flipped the field a few times.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. That was even one thing listening to Bob and Doug, not Bob and Doug McKenzie, but Bob Irving, Doug Brown on the CJOB broadcast, because as much as I love my boy DT, I kind of grew up listening to Bob Irving. It's the home broadcast. I gotta do it, right? I mean, there's DT and Luke are so good, but I gotta do it, right? So they were amazed with the hang time and the placement of the ball, because I think they were kind of sensing the same thing from Jon Ryan last year, but it's almost like they're not calling him to go for the pure coffin corner anymore, like kick it out of bounds at the 5-yard line. It's like, okay, hit this as high as you can and as far as you can on one side of the field, and the cover team will get down there. And I think Saskatchewan's cover team has been improved from, the last time we saw him on the field in 2019.
Yeah, so I think from there, I think Craig Dickinson sort of bemoaned maybe a little bit of a loss, a little bit of a lack of athletes to do that job. And I think they've sort of restocked the cupboard in that regard a little bit, yeah.
And it does feel weird to say good things about Jon Ryan, but you're right. He was largely responsible for Winnipeg not running away with the Banjo Bowl, or the Labor Day Classic on the scoreboard. I just cursed it. I said they'd run away with the Banjo Bowl by accident. Son of a bitch. Fuck. Damn it.
Hey, Jacques Cartier, show's over.
Is your vehicle stopping like it should? Does it squeal or grind when you brake? Don't miss out on summer brake deals at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Oh, oh,